Good afternoon. May I request everyone to stand up for the singing of our Lupang Hinirang, to be led by Ms. Ina Moralejo.
Sa simoy at sa langit mong bukha, ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. May kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pag may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw na walhating magsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming
To host and moderate the event for today, may I call on Ms. Karen Davila.
Your phone. Hello, good afternoon. It's so nice to be here. It's such an honor. First of all, I want you to know that it was so stressful to get to UP because everything is one way. And I was so shocked because I am from UP and they told me it's because there are so many cars in UP now that apparently a lot of the roads have to be one way already. But I mean, I just have to say this before we start. I've interviewed Professor Pernia many times on the show when he was with NEDA in and out of office. So just to be here, I'm really here to let you know, Professor Pernia, it's just an honor to be back here in UP and listen to you speak again. So we have participants right now who are watching our live stream through the UP School of Economics official YouTube channel. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the 6th lecture of the PCED at 50 lecture series. This is the 50 years of economic policy making. The event is presented to you by, of course, the UP School of Economics and the Philippine Center for Economic Development, which is currently celebrating its 50th founding anniversary. Today as well, November 17, the school and PCED pays tribute to the school's former dean and national scientist, Dr. Jose Encarnacion Jr., by celebrating his 95th birth anniversary. So in celebration of PCED's illustrious history and achievements, the 50 lecture series was crafted and executed in pursuit of PCED's mandate to support the UP School of Economics in its effort to provide quality economic education, and may I add, relevant to the times. This series has featured the talks of former heads of the NEDA, namely Dr. Gerardo Sicat, Professor Solita Monsod, Dr. Shel Abito, Dr. Felipe Medalla, Dr. Dante Canlas, and our speaker today, Dr. Ernesto Pernia. So today we hold the 6th lecture of the series. To introduce our main speaker, may I call Ms. Olivia Limpeao, President of Destileria Limtuaco, one of the country's leading companies boasting a 171-year history of manufacturing excellence as well as local and international accreditations. Ms. Limpeao is also an alumna of the school.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Karen, for the introduction. But before I start, unlike you, I went through the one way. or else I'd be late today. But anyway, I'm truly honored to be and privileged to introduce our last lecturer for the PCED lecture series titled 50 Years of Economic Policy Making. To be delivered, of course, by my professor, Professor Emeritus Ernesto M. Pernia, NEDA Secretary from 2016 to 2020, multi-awarded economist and book author, and with numerous board chairmanships and memberships in government and private institutions to boot. I've known Dr. Pernia for 40 years now. He was my thesis advisor in senior year. Back then, he was the chairman of the Department of Economics at the UP School of Economics. Hence, my thesis partner, Vivian Cesar, and I were truly elated to have him as our advisor. I do remember him as a kind, patient, understanding, and very supportive advisor, despite us being clueless advisees at the onset. Plus, Dr. Pernia was not only brains, he also had the looks. Yes, he was crush-worthy back then. Yes, he had this scholarly cerebral appeal, a gentlemanly demeanor, and somewhat boyish, you can still see him now, he's slim, and clean-cut kind of attractiveness. But on a more serious note, I'd like to talk about his credentials. So what sets him apart from the others? I would say it's his education. As a philosophy major in San Carlos Seminary, he developed profound and critical thinking skills and a deep desire to understand basic fundamental truths about existence, knowledge, ethics, and methodical considerations of reality and how it affects and impacts human existence and experience. This became the foundation for his economics education, from his undergraduate degree all the way to his doctorate degree in economics. This is evident in the fields of specialization and interest, which lies in development economics, demographic and human resource economics, urban and regional economics, and of course, macroeconomics. It can also be gleaned from his works, accomplishments, and guiding principles that the study of economics, the direction of economic policy making, must always be done in the context of human development, a focus on humanity. After all, the desire and wish for a better life is universal and is the very purpose of economics, which is to get the most value from the resources for the greater good. While Dr. Pernia was the NEDA secretary, I had the privilege to have several exchanges with him. He was always curious to know how macroeconomic policies impacted people and firms, how it affects the lives, and how we do business. Oftentimes, he would validate what he already thought or verify things when data and anecdotal evidence didn't seem to make sense or didn't seem to add up. He didn't just read reports or look at the numbers. He went down to grassroots whenever the opportunity arose to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. This is testament to his wisdom, his confidence, and his courage to face reality, to admit that sometimes policies don't work out the way they are designed to be or expected to be, and that pragmatism to make things right. After all, no one is perfect, and we don't have a crystal ball. And even if we did have a crystal ball, the concept of ceteris paribus in economics, which makes economic policy making not as multidimensional or multifaceted as it should be, given the complexity of the real world. So given Dr. Pernia's passion, integrity, and nationalism, I'm sure he poured his heart and soul into this upcoming lecture entitled Philippines, What Could Have Been and What Can Be Done. We hope that our leaders, our bureaucrats, And our country's movers and shakers will take heed in the hope of a better future for our country and for all Filipinos. Thank you very much, Dr. Pernia, for sharing your time and knowledge with all of us. Now may we call Dr. Pernia for his lecture. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. It is a pleasure to be attending this for my lecture series, and I did not expect so many friends and colleagues here, and of course. The one who introduced me, Madame Olive Limpiao, was really correct in saying that I was her professor in economics. I forget now. I think it had to do also with her thesis, and that. I did all right as far as my teaching and my advice on her thesis was. And I'd also thank our MC, Madame Karen Davila, who was just elected or chosen as the first UN Women's national ambassador for the Philippines, and which is a great honor. So she's a very pricey MC, but I think prices are, mutable. They can be changed. Okay, so let me start before I start my lecture, I would like first to give a tribute to Dr. Jose Encarnacion, our late former dean of the School of Economics. We, the faculty, graduates, students, and staff of the UPSE, UP School of Economics, today remember with kindness and honor our late former dean, Jose Encarnacion Jr., November 17, 1928 to July 5, 1998. He was an eminent scholar, a great educator, and an exemplary leader, which with a good architectural sense, and as shown by the main building, which houses the classrooms and the faculty offices, and also the library building, which also carries the auditorium where we are right now. All told then, former Dean Jose Encarnacion Jr. was a peerless or peerless or unequal in terms of being a leader and dean of the UP School of Economics. And a great pity, he passed away at a relatively young age of 69, implying that many of us seniors have outaged him, unfortunately. Unfortunately for us, or as well as for him. So let me end by saying, R.I.P. Dean Encarnacion. Rest in peace. Thank you for listening on that tribute. So the meta title of my presentation is "What Could Have Been, What Can Be Done," and it actually contains 3 parts. The first one is has to do with the administration of PRRD, that is President Rodrigo Rua Duterte, 2016 to 2020 first quarter. That is when I was in the cabinet. Then the second part is a sluggish demographic transition leads to elusive dividend. And this is a reprise, meaning that this is already a known phenomenon, but I think there have been developments since then, and that is what I'm going to talk about. Then the third part is moving forward development policy priorities. In other words, what should we do having been a laggard in terms of development in ASEAN? What can we do, and what can be done in terms of development policy priorities? Okay, I'll just have snippets on the PRRD administration. So policies and laws, ease of doing business and efficient government service delivery was one. Rice tariffication, which worked very well, except that right now it is problematic, and I think they're going to do something different now about rice availability. Public Service Act, Foreign Investment Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and then the National Innovation Council. And then population management, cum family planning, except that it was not budgeted adequately. The economic performance of the Philippines in 2016 to 2019 was not bad at all compared with how it's going on now. GDP growth rate averaged 6.6%, 2016 to 2019. Unemployment rate was at about 5.3%. Lowest poverty incidence at 16.7% in 2018 from 23.5% in 2015. Fiscal space, the highest revenue at 16% and the lowest national debt vis-a-vis GDP at only 39%. Highest credit rating, BBB+, A- range. The Philippines was on the cusp of becoming an upper middle income country in 2020 or to 2021, if not for the COVID-19 pandemic that drastically set it back, owing to the government's mismanagement of the crisis, likely the worst in ASEAN. Philippines sparing funds in spending per capita despite the substantial borrowings for the crisis. Let me now go to my main presentation. Well, on the whole, the performance of the economy during that period, actually, Duterte was hands-off. Only the economic team was really working to achieve those numbers. So, on the whole, it was quite respectable. Okay, the next part of my presentation, sluggish demographic transition leads to elusive demographic dividend. The abstract is there on the board. Population management seems to have gotten reasonably well in 1970, but no sooner had the program gained traction when the Roman Catholic hierarchy and pro-life groups, conservative pro-life groups, opposed the population program, family planning, which President Marcos Sr. acceded to removing or stopping the family planning program around mid-1970s. Most countries in Asia started to adopt population management, family planning program in 1970, and the Philippines was among the first to do it in that year. So, President Marcos, as I've said, acceded to stopping the family planning program to accommodate the Roman Catholic hierarchy for political expediency. Thus, with a failed family planning program, declining fertility, a necessary condition for demographic transition towards faster economic growth, higher employment, and poverty reduction could not be achieved. Such was the huge missed opportunity. Graphically illustrated by comparing the Philippines and Thailand. In terms of demographic economic indicators in 1970, but had dramatically diverged. They were similar in 1970, but dramatically diverged by 2020, and further still in 2000, and further still in 2020. After seeing the abstract, it is clear that the Philippines, erstwhile a leading nation in Asia, next only to Japan in the 1950s and 60s, yet half a century later, it had fallen steeply in the context of ASEAN and East Asia. You can see, as you can see on the board, the Philippines is the laggard in terms of these numbers. Economic growth was still the fastest, continues to be the fastest. It had been the fastest, it still continues to be the fastest. And then the population size was 110 million, the highest vis-a-vis land area, except for Indonesia, that is a huge land area. And then in terms of median age, the median age was the lowest in the Philippines compared with other Asian countries. That's because we were starting very slow in terms of fertility reduction. And then in terms of poverty reduction, poverty incidence, we had the highest except for Myanmar and Laos. And in terms of income inequality, Gini index, the Philippines had the highest in 2021. These numbers refer to 2021-22. In fact, the Philippines population size was only 110 in 2021, but it's now 117. That's because of the fastest growth rate of the population among the Asian countries. As late as the early 2020s, the Philippines continued to have the fastest population growth, largest population size vis-a-vis land area, lowest median age, highest poverty incidence, poverty rate, except for Laos and Myanmar, and highest inequality. Yeah, and then if we look at the per capita income of the Asian countries, we see that the Philippines had plunged to number 7 out of 11 ASEAN countries, overtaken by Vietnam. It was overtaken by Vietnam in 2020. As you know, the Philippine economy shrunk by 9.6% in 2020, and but Vietnam, instead of a lower economic growth, it overtook the Philippines, and Vietnam is now an upper middle income country, which was something that the Philippines could have achieved if it had handled the COVID pandemic better. But compared with other Asian countries, the Philippines was the worst in terms of handling the pandemic. Undoubtedly, the Philippine situation has posed a huge challenge to its economy and society at large. The elephant in the room. There has hardly been a serious social debate or debate about it, or the issue has just been sidestepped or swept under the rug for political expediency. The imposition of martial law in 1972 facilitated the implementation of the government's population program, but adamant opposition, as I already mentioned, of the Roman Catholic hierarchy and conservative groups prevailed, which Marcos had to accommodate. A great pity, as according to development economists, population program cum family planning is regarded as among the most cost-effective development policy option. Big bang per small buck. Besides unbridled international trade and unfettered international migration. The difference, though, is the problem, though, is that international migration and international trade they have to be done agreeably among countries. But in terms of population management, it can be done by country alone without having to coordinate with other countries. So let me now go to the issue of demographic transition. Meanwhile, the Philippines' ASEAN neighbors sustained their population management programs, kung family planning, initiated in 1970, leading to demographic transition from high fertility and high mortality to low fertility and low mortality, which resulted in significant changes in the population age structure that in turn favorably influenced economic growth more robustly when complemented by suitable socio-economic policies. Demographic transition has 5 stages, but here I will show only 3 stages showing the Philippines vis-a-vis Japan, Philippines, Thailand, and Japan. In the first stage, infant mortality rate declines, but fertility stays high. And this results in dependency burden, a large dependency burden, as you can see in the pyramid. Heavy dependency burden. The country has had a high youth dependency, okay, and the major challenge here is much of the scarce resources had to be spent on increased needs for primary health care, nutrition, education, and related services for the dependent population, for the young dependent population. As far as stage 2 is concerned, that was stage 1. Stage 2 is concerned, this is what Thailand was in 2000. Thailand in 2000, the proportion of working age population, those aged 15 to 64, expands vis-a-vis the young population, young dependents, and the older population, aged 65 and over. The challenge is generating job opportunities, to make available job opportunities to engage this working age population. And then in the third stage, the older population, 65 and over, this is about Japan. Marketing expands markedly, 65 and over markedly expands relative to the total population, as in Japan 2000, which poses a different set of requirements, healthcare and other services that are needed for older population. And that is the case of Japan. In fact, Japan's population now is declining I think it's now Japan is now 125 million. It used to be 127 million. So the divergence of quasi-twins, which is the Philippines and Thailand, you can see the difference between the population pyramid on the left and the population pyramid on the right. That is Thailand. So what is noteworthy here is the pronounced divergence by 2000 of the Philippines vis-a-vis Thailand, with the latter having demographically transformed after 3 decades, while the Philippine population had risen to 77 million in 2000. Thailand's population had only risen to 63 million. In 1970, Philippines and Thailand had the same population size of 35 million each, but they diverged by 2000. Evidently, population had significantly slowed in Thailand, which achieved replacement fertility as early as 1990. A milestone not expected of the Philippines. The Philippines is probably going to achieve replacement fertility by 2025 at the earliest, or maybe 2030. So that would be about four decades and a half now for the Philippines to catch up with Thailand's replacement fertility. Well, replacement fertility simply refers to 2.1 children per woman or per couple. Unlike most of its Southeast Asia and Southeast and East Asian neighbors, the Philippines failed to undergo timely demographic transition, with its family planning program discontinued in the latter part of 1970s. We already said that. Here, thereby keeping fertility and population growth rates high, hence the outlier in the region's demographic transition. This is demonstrated in the following figures, 4AB to 7AB. 7AB. The Philippines lags. The Philippines still lags in stage 1 in 2000, and as in figure 1 earlier, and stage 2 in 2020-2021, while Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand have already transited from stage 2 to stage 3 in 2020-2021. Key to the demographic transition, critical for the economy, was the reduction in fertility that accounts for a sizable portion, about 1/3 of economic growth, as shown by the various studies, in terms of the East Asian tigers over 1965 to 1995. This is Vietnam. I think the Philippines, I already showed you the Philippines in 2000 and in 2020 2021 to 2022. That's the Philippines pyramid. This is Vietnam, which is quite different in states. In stage 3 or stage 2, but stage 3. And this is Malaysia, also different. The thing you to notice there is the bulge on the lower part becomes shifts upward. And then this is Thailand. So Thailand is the most advanced in terms of demographic transition. Now let me talk about the demographic dividend, which tends to follow demographic transition. The demographic dividend is manifested or reflected in economic growth and saving rate as a country increases its workforce while reducing its dependency burden, as earlier illustrated in the case of Thailand vis-a-vis the Philippines in 2000, and subsequently in the case of Malaysia, or in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand again in the later population pyramids vis-a-vis the Philippines, transition from 2000 to 2020-2021. Demographic dividend is not necessarily automatic. A demographic transition simply affords a demographic window of opportunity that has to be complemented by the right kind of policy environment leading to self-sustaining economic growth and employment, poverty reduction, and others related to the reduction in fertility. The growing number of young adults, particularly those aged 15 to 24, during the second phase of the transition can be productive provided the labor market is sufficiently flexible and expansive given the right government policies, such as those conducive to women's education, labor force participation, as well as modern family planning in particular. In the Philippines, consumptive prevalence rate seems stuck at around 54%, of which modern family planning is only 42%, whereas Thailand, even Bangladesh now, Malaysia and Vietnam, they are at 70%. 70% modern family planning, not traditional. Incidentally, high fertility and poverty typically leads to a vicious circle that can be self-perpetuating. Hence, it's crucial to reach the poor with modern family planning, education, and health services that can enable them to move out of poverty. So why achieving replacement fertility matters? Why does it matter? Bringing total fertility rate down to replacement fertility is critical as it facilitates higher employment, economic growth, saving rate, and inclusivity. replacement fertility, the global average is generally enables the demographic dividend to rise sharply, as exemplified by the Philippines' more dynamic and progressive neighbors in the region. Excepting Singapore, which made it in the mid-1970s, Thailand achieved it in 1990, as I said earlier, followed by Vietnam in 2006, Brunei, Darussalam, and Malaysia in 2013. This is achieving replacement fertility of 2.1. So moving forward, development policy priorities. This is my third part. So clearly, the Philippines failed family planning program, the core of population management, owing to hard church, soft state stance, made a big difference in the country's capability for socioeconomic advancement vis-a-vis its ASEAN original neighbors, including Vietnam. I'm going to talk now about the three: human development or human capital development, social infrastructure, and physical infrastructure. In terms of priority of nature and priority of order, the sequence should be human capital development first, followed by social infrastructure, which actually is needed for human development, and the third is physical infrastructure. However, the Philippines' partnership in physical infrastructure is talked about more often and resonates more widely in policy or social discourse than human and social infrastructures. And the budget of allocation for physical infrastructure often visibly dwarfs those for human and social infrastructure. Yet, in terms of priority of nature, prioritas naturae in Latin, and of order, priority of order, human capital and social infrastructure should take precedence. Overall, our country's three principal types of infrastructure, human, social, and physical, sorely need major enhancements to be in step with our ASEAN neighbors, which calls for resolute attention and from the government and the private sector and society at large, along with the requisite budgetary support. I think you're familiar with this. A child's human capital development begins early, in the early stage of the mother's pregnancy, and becomes more manifest at 0 to 5 years of age. Growth is so fast that by age 5, the child's brain is already around 90% of the adult's brain. It is reported that in our country, 1/3 of 0 to 5 age children are stunted or underweight owing to malnutrition, even in pregnancy, hence unable to reach their full potential in the later years. Father Bienvenido Nebres, SJ, reports that 95 children daily, every day, die owing to malnutrition. This is tantamount to around 34,600 yearly children dying because of malnutrition. Self-rated poverty surveys conducted by the social weather stations reveal that overall poverty in 1983 was at 54% of households in 1983. It was down to only 51% by 2022, a measly reduction of 3 percentage points for all of 4 decades. Moreover, the food poor are 34% of households and 41% do not have the education and skills needed to earn a wage. An early World Bank 2022 pandemic-related report reveals that 91% of children at age 10 are unable to read and understand a short and simple text, putting the Philippines at the bottom of 10 Asian countries in terms of learning poverty. Singapore was at the top, followed by South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, China, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India, in that order. The Department of Education recorded around 29 million enrollees in basic education, K-12, in school year 2021-2022, a 4% increase from the previous school year. Accounting for over a quarter of the country's total population, suggesting that public spending per student is a mere fraction of corresponding spending in Asian peers. Spending per student in Indonesia, for example, is around 60% of spending 60% of spending in the Philippines. No, 60% of spending in the Philippines is only 60% of spending in Indonesia. And relative to Thailand, it's about 1/4 or 1/3 of spending per children. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I'm almost done, actually. We have a problem relevant to the issue of spending per student is the quantity-quality trade-off. The larger the population size, the larger the number of children, the budget constraints are more difficult for teachers, learning materials, not to mention child nutrition. This is a unique problem of the Philippines in the ASEAN context. Social infrastructure refers to hospitals, specialized medical facilities, schools, and clinics manned by well-trained teachers in schools and equipped with appropriate paraphernalia and a large enough cadre of medical doctors and properly compensated healthcare workers. Social infrastructure needs to be adequately and equitably distributed nationwide with specialized hospitals, science high schools, and higher education institutions based in the main cities of the regions. This will be a major contribution to addressing the stark inequality and poverty across the regions. Over 1 year, 6 administrations, over the past administrations, there were only 5 projects in education and 1 in health in the Pinoy administration, and 3 health projects under the Duterte administration. This shows that social infrastructure projects via PPP, public-private partnerships, tend to be scarce as they are not as financially lucrative as physical infrastructure. Not financially lucrative to the private sector proponent or partner. A serious, well-studied consideration of the state of human capital development in our country, cited above, would suggest that it entails massive and smartly allocated investment in social infrastructure with well-suited trained personnel. This will enable the provision of quality education and health services to both young and older population. The physical infrastructure, this is the last of the 3. This completes the infrastructure triad. It is also a costly undertaking, but the difference is that physical infrastructure can be handled by public-private partnerships, and also it can be funded from Official Development Assistance, ODA, which in the case of human capital and social infrastructure, they are not available to those types of needs. The current administration seems keen on undertaking public-private partnership projects, especially given the economy's tight fiscal constraints. In fact, 194 so-called flagship projects have been announced by the President, 71 of which are carryovers from the previous administration, and 45 projects are PPPs. So ODA and PPPs are easily available or attractive to PPPs, but not human capital and physical infrastructure. The PPP modality has been adopted by a number of ADB developing member countries. I'm running fast now, allowing them to get more needed funding, a quantum improvement. Yeah, it should be free. It should free up. In the case of human and social infrastructure, with PPP and ODA in physical infrastructure, those should free up government funds for human capital and development and social infrastructure, allowing them to get much more needed funding, a quantum improvement from the traditional budget allocation. Thus, prioritization should follow the infrastructure triad of human, social, and physical infrastructure in that order, with the first buttressed by the second, and the second in turn facilitated by the third. This would make it possible, given the Philippines' serious health and education crisis with its large population vis-a-vis land area, and also the fastest growing population in ASEAN, for the infrastructure triad to vigorously advance the country's economic and inclusive development. The current Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028 appropriately cites key strategies and approaches for sustained economic development. First, maintain robust macroeconomic fundamentals. Second, and this ought to be underscored, the vitality of the economy is only as good as the country's health and education systems, which is what I was talking about earlier. And the third, a whole of government and whole of society approach is fundamental to policy efficacy. Concluding note, therefore, the government must walk the necessary strategy for sustained economic development, which is to put greatest emphasis on health and education rather than on physical infrastructure, which unfortunately seems to resonate more under the current administration. Physical infrastructure resonates much more than human and social infrastructure than in this current administration. This is a constructive critique of what the current administration is practicing in terms of human, social, and physical infrastructure, and which is needed, but it's not being talked about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nagising kayo, no? Thank you very much, Professor Pernia. We will be changing the program a bit. We're going to be doing now the open forum. We'll be discussing the points that Professor Pernia presented along with our reactors, but we'll have them on stage. And later on, I'll be calling on JC Punong Bayan. He will be facilitating the open forum with the audience. So I'd like to call on stage Dr. Adoracion Navarro to join us. Dr. Navarro is a senior research fellow at the Philippine Institute for Developmental Studies, and her research interests are basically in energy, infrastructure, public-private partnerships, and subnational development. I'd also like to call on stage Ms. Domini Velasquez, the Vice President, Chief Economist, and Head of the Economic and Markets Research Division of China Bank. Her experience is in macroeconomic research and policy analysis. And last, of course, Dr. Jaime Galvestan, or Dr. Jimmy, currently the chairman of Health Futures Foundation, and of course, our former health secretary. All right. So let's start first with the basic question. The basic question that Professor Pernia asked, and I want to make this as practical as possible, our conversation, to make it understandable to the audience. Your question is, what could have been, what can be done? So you focus essentially on population. You can take this, Professor. You focus on population and essentially point out that in the 1970s, in effect, we missed the boat. That's the long and short of it. We missed the boat, right, when it comes to population. And yet, many people credit our young population, our growing population, to the reason why we are the fastest growing economy in Asia. So ang tanong ng ordinaryong mamamayan, ano ba talaga? Dapat ba sisihin ang populasyon o ito ba ang nagpapalago ng ating ekonomiya? Sa inyo po.
Yes. No, I think the reason why we are growing faster, a bit faster than our Asian neighbors, is that we started from a low base. We sank 9.6% in 2020. The economy sank 9.6% in 2020. And that is why Vietnam overtook us in 2020. Vietnam is now an upper middle income country, which should have been the Philippines muna. But then, because of our mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, we sank 9.6%, which is pretty deep in terms of the economy.
Okay, and I can ask each and everybody here, Vietnam is the rising star, as they say. That's the darling of ASEAN. But is COVID-19 the only reason why the Philippines is in this particular state and the population? Vietnam, for example, has foreign direct investments a year of at least $20 billion. Are we looking at bigger issues with the Philippines when we compare it to Vietnam? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello. I guess partly, yes, that's true. Of course, we cannot, I don't think we do blame the population management alone as is. Of course, you do have, your governance issues, your ease of doing business in terms of ensuring that the growth is sustainable. We do have, I think, in the Philippines, concerns about political changes and continuity of policies. I've been with NEDA for 12 years old, so I was with the Secretary Pernia, and I think maybe when preparing for this discussion, I was actually looking at different Philippine development plans. In terms of Philippine development plans, as it was written, we see a lot of continuity in terms of spending on health, on nutrition. We've also seen focus on generating jobs. The thing is, of course, that's really just a plan, and really what happened or how it's actualized, that's really the concern, and that sometimes is the disconnect between what we've planned and what has happened.
All right. What about you, ma'am?
Foreign direct investments have been slow in coming, and as mentioned by Domini, the ease of doing business is still a major concern. Although we passed the Ease of Doing Business Act, it's still costly to do business and even to exit out of business here in the Philippines. And of course, the physical infrastructure constraints that was mentioned by Secretary Pernia. But again, we have PPPs, but I was part of the past administration, but in the past administration, some PPPs were transferred to ODA, so we missed, we missed our chance in improving PPPs there. But let me go back to a problem that Sec Pernia mentioned, human capital development. So, and even in that respect, our neighbors are surpassing us in the development of their human capital. And in fact, what we're experiencing
in terms of how?
Deficit.
Be specific.
Yeah, human capital deficit. No, Sec Pernia mentioned earlier that 9 out of 10 students age 10 and below can't read. And actually, he said that's 2022, but that assessment was for 2019. So that means next year, the 10-year-old that was assessed in 2019 will be of working age. So that's human capital deficit. And the demographic transition story that he mentioned is very valid. That's why we've been left out. But let me update that, by the way, because he mentioned the replacement fertility rate that we are yet to achieve that. Actually, there's a recent figure, Sec Pernia. This is not a critique, but just an update. No, we've already achieved the replacement fertility rate. So
Meaning per couple just has 2 kids?
no, that is per woman or per couple, but even for a single, 2.1, but that's statistical average. So if you round off 2 kids, no, we've already achieved that. In fact, the figure is 1.9 per the 2022 National Demographic and Health Survey. So things are gonna look up. So high population growth might not be a huge problem. But let me provide another update, because in developing countries, on the average, when the replacement fertility rate is achieved, what comes next is high inequality in the short term. So therefore, it means that we still have to focus on the demographic transition problem in the Philippines, or challenge in the Philippines. But let's shift our focus on inequality. And that includes geographic inequality. Because I looked at the figures last night. BARM replacement fertility rate is still very high at 3+, and then NCR is close to the 1.9 national average. Just an update.
Yeah.
All right, wow. I'm curious, for a regular person, what's a 1.9 child? That's either 1 or 2, right? Make up your mind. What's a 2.1 child, right? I know, so 2, okay? Go ahead.
Average. It's average.
You were saying,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's an
Did you want to
average.
dispute?
Yeah, I was going to say that I did discuss with MAPA about, he said 1.9, but then there are still many provinces and regions that have more than 1.9, and they're still above replacement fertility. So that is what I came about.
All right. So Dr. Jaime Galvestan was once health secretary. So I want to ask you something. Professor Pernia pointed out the investments that we make in terms of human, social, and physical. And I find it quite interesting because under the Constitution, we are mandated by law to give education the biggest budget. So when you think of it in terms of numbers, you can't debate with senators and congressmen. They will tell you, of course, education has the biggest investment. I've been a journalist for 30 years, so you can imagine how many public work secretaries I've spoken to, wherein they said, we've spent 2% for infrastructure with GDP, 2% of GDP. But during the time of President Duterte, that's when we wanted to move it. I think we spent 5% of GDP. Is this correct? Roughly, okay.
Yeah. Well, 5%. Yeah, we were trying to double the previous, ratio.
Okay, so my question to Dr. Tan, when you look at the numbers, we still spend the most on education. Health, definitely not. But where are we failing if education takes the #1 spot in the budget?
Yes, thank you, Karen. And of course, I'd like to congratulate First Secretary Pernia. Isang palakpak pa po ulit. Well, as mentioned by Secretary Pernia very well, we are already there, demographic transition. What we should do as policy is take advantage of the demographic dividend. And this is where we focus on the 15-year-old to 24. But now, right now, I'd like to expand it. The real productive workforce, I'm sure, as all of us will agree, will be 15 to 35. But right now, when you look at the health of the 15 to 35, now there are 4 critical issues facing our young workforce. No? So number 1, HIV/AIDS. We're still the highest in the world. And we're only the
In the world?
In the world, yes. And we're the only country in the world with a rising HIV. All the whole world is decreasing by 30%. We're increasing by 30%.
We're higher than Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. And number 2, teenage pregnancy. We're one of the highest in Asia. Although there's some good news, we dropped a few percent because of the pandemic. The pandemic actually helped lessen the teen pregnancy.
No sex?
Yes, no sex.
They're all home, alone.
Yeah, yes.
Walang kausap, walang
Or
kasama.
Hindi lang yung kung if ever punong-puno yung bahay na hindi pwedeng mag-sex.
Oo nga. Okay.
Thirdly,
Oo nga.
I'd like to say this is the most critical. No? For the last 30 years, Karen, and to the audience, we have had 30%, as mentioned already by Secretary Pernia, of our children. Actually, it's not only below 6, even below 12, because school children are also measured in terms of stunting. And stunting means chronic malnutrition, prolonged malnutrition. Now, when you're stunted at 6 or stunted at 12, you're stunted forever. So when we look at audience or our people, 30% of our people right now, even adults are already rather experiencing the stunted development. And lastly, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis affects right now the 15 to 34. Unfortunately, in the recent tuberculosis survey, our tuberculosis is even higher than 1995.
You're kidding?
The rate, yes, it's
Really?
quite so unfortunate. No? And we are among 30 countries burdened with tuberculosis. We're the 4th in the whole world. Marami tayong
But
pinagmamalaki.
why? But why?
But why? And that
Why?
is why, what could have been and what can be done. No? And then in terms of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, we're 7th in the world. And these 4, I'm just mentioning 4. I could mention others, but for me, these are the 4 greatest issues in human capital building. Okay, so how can we develop our human capital if they are all sick with HIV/AIDS, having stunting, and then tuberculosis, plus, of course, teenage pregnancies, and even the teens right now, they have their second child in 20 months, while adults have the second child in 30 months. So, I mean, I always tell the health people that our goal in teenage pregnancy, no pregnancy for the next 6 years. I mean, really, because the statistics show that once you get pregnant at a teenager, you get pregnant again in a matter of time. Anyway, that's the human capital. Talk of the social capital. Do you know that more than 40% of all barangays in the Philippines do not have a decent barangay health station? We're talking universal health care, but if at least that's counting around 24,000 barangays not having any single barangay health station, and what more, no human resource infrastructure. You may feel that as if we have so many hospitals, but when I review our hospital bed to population ratio, we do not even meet the standard of World Health Organization. We need more social infrastructure, more health stations, more hospitals, more hospital beds across the country. So, I mean, we're going to miss the boat in the demographic transition. When I reviewed what Secretary Pernia said, the 174 flagship programs of President BBM today, only 5 are in health of the 174 flagship. 194, I'm sorry, yes. 190, only 5 are in health. think of it. What about, what about the others? Thank you. That's
All right, all
that's
that-
how I will respond to your
Yes.
question. Why? And again, nalu ulit, no? And lastly, please look at your side, look below. And the elephant in the room, is anybody noticing it?
What?
Diba? The elephant in the room, ang laki-laki, no?
Oh.
Wala tayong family planning, diba?
Oo nga.
Why are we so afraid of the Catholic Church? Sorry. All surveys show that Catholic families, 9 out of 10, want family planning. So who's afraid of family planning?
The legislators. Okay, wait. After that very... Not us, but definitely those who are running for office. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Health Secretary Ted Herbosa. Can you stand up, sir? He's here right now. So it's such a perfect thing to listen to, right? Okay. So this is very good. Okay. Wait,
I just want to say,
Yeah.
you said that we have a huge budget for education.
No, I didn't say huge. I said constitutionally, it's the biggest.
Yes, but then we have so many children.
Yeah.
You know, you have to divide that. And as I've said, it's only a little fraction compared with other countries in the region. It's per student spending is a small fraction. No, what the other countries like Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia are spending.
So do we need confidential funds for the DepEd? I'm curious. You're not in office. You can answer.
Maybe we can
Will that help?
confidential funds should be shifted to education and
Okay.
health,
Oh, sige. Moving on. Go ahead.
There's actually a request to transfer the confidential fund to the National Literacy Program. But as Dr. Medalla always say, the devil is in the details. And perhaps the devil has imagination for discretionary spending and ghost beneficiaries if the guidelines are not detailed enough.
Okay. All right. So some main points, because we have to go on broad strokes here, essentially, is given the fact that we've missed the boat when it comes to population control, although the RH law has been passed, the irony, it seems, is it's in the mindset, the conditioning of the Filipino people that make it harder, right, to implement the RH law. And also the fact that when you go to barangay health centers, sa totoo lang, wala naman doong libreng condom, wala naman doong libreng pills. I mean, that's a fact. Hindi naman yun isa-suggest. Kasi nga, the problem with reproductive health in the Philippines is it's so dependent on the belief of the mayor. So we have that kind of politics, but that's another long discussion. So let's move on to what can be done. What can be done? So I'd like to start off with Dr. Navarro. You have President Marcos Jr., Dr. Navarro and Domini after. You have President Marcos Jr., who essentially, I'd have to say, compared to the past president, although you said his performance was reasonable, right? Define reasonable. Define.
You're talking about Duterte?
Oh, you said.
Yeah.
You said. Okay.
I was referring to the economy.
Okay.
2016 to 2019. And Duterte was actually a hands-off person. He was single-minded about drugs, and he didn't participate in the other, other activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So coming from former President Duterte to now we have President Marcos Jr., who essentially, in terms of investments, being accepted by the West, I'd have to say is more palatable. That's the right word. So what can we do, considering you have a president right now that essentially is selling the country worldwide? He's an APEC right now when it comes to foreign policy. He's making a clear stand with the West Philippine Sea. You have 6 years of President Marcos Jr., what can he do? What can this government do to at least experience some gains?
Yeah, well, in keeping with the theme of Secretary Pernia's lecture, I would like to focus on social infrastructure that can be done through more PPPs. And although Sec Pernia mentioned earlier that they're not financiable or not viable, arrangements can be done to make that so.
Like what?
Like
How do you make it innovative?
what's called viability gap funding, or what's called amortization scheme, build transfer scheme, turnkey contract, and that means that the private sector will initially fund the hospitals, the school buildings, and then the government will amortize the payments. No, so that will be less burden for the government. So, and in fact, that was done during the Aquino administration for the education sector, but for the health sector, there were many opponents from the leftist group when it comes to the PPP scheme for hospitals, kasi that was interpreted as privatization of a social service, but that is not true. And then human capital deficit problem. We're allotting a budget for it. That's the number one, or the biggest share in the budget is going to education, but still it's not enough on a per capita basis or a per student basis. But still, vigilance, if there will be quality spending, we can achieve more, and the vigilance is required to ensure that the budget really goes to its intended purpose, not discretionary, and yung may baseline and may targets.
Okay, Dominique?
I think one of the things maybe I know Secretary Pernia put in there some of the reforms during the Duterte administration. While I was talking to him maybe a month ago, I was actually telling him, looking back, there were a lot of social reforms. There were a lot of institutionalization of social reforms during the Duterte administration. So you do have, we removed the TRO in the RH bill, in the RH law. You do have a lot of the first 1,000 Days Act, and then also National Feeding Program. We did have the universal health care, and also we made the 4Ps into a law, right? And aside from that, you do have some jobs-related bills, the Expanded Maternity Leave Act, which actually induced more women to participate in the labor force, and you do have that Telecommunicating Act. I think because this Duterte administration, it had a lot of political capital to actually push for those reforms, really making sure that these reforms are done properly, implemented properly. When we talk about the 4Ps, we talk about proper targeting, updated lists in terms of who are the 4Ps. So those little things, you can actually bank on the actual, you can bank on already the reforms done in the past, right? So those are the things. And then I think maybe one more thing that I think maybe I need to mention, just because I'm now working in the financial sector, is that, when we're preparing for the stage 3 of the demographic dividend, we have to look at savings rate of the Philippines. So, we do have to look at savings rate. Gross national savings of the Philippines still way below Asian peers, ASEAN peers, and that's something that we can do it now. Well, we're not at the stage 3 level yet.
And how could you improve that?
For gross national savings, financial literacy, improving the number of the people who have bank accounts now, maybe a little bit fluid now that you do have GCash already, you have access to let's say, other financial products. And I think maybe roll out of the the national ID, because you can't really open a bank account if you don't have an ID, right? So that's really a starting point on how you'll be able to make sure that every Filipinos have the opportunity to actually open a bank account and to be able to save.
Okay. But then the problem is, you also need, I think, 5,000 pesos to open a bank account. Kung passbook, mataas din siya.
I think maybe a little bit lower now. Maybe a
Is
little
it?
bit lower now. I guess some moral suasion in terms of asking banks to actually lower this deposit requirement, minimum deposit requirement. Now that they do need current account and savings account under this high interest rate environment.
Okay, so Dominic talked about essentially the reforms and the initiatives taken by the Duterte administration to advance the country economically. What do you think is the gap, Dr. Tan? Because when you read it, Universal Healthcare Law, 1,000 days, feeding program, it all sounds good on paper. You think all problems solved.
Karen, and to the audience, the problem is equity. Equity. When you look there, the areas of inequities in the Philippines have already been identified, and yet we are not there. I always look like, has healthcare education gone to Homonhon Island? I use Homonhon because Magellan discovered Homonhon, and up to now, no good education, no good health system. Just in Homonhon Island. I'm just sure. So what I'm trying to say, yes, the Philippines is progressive, but one thing that I can say, if we want to act on human capital, quality of human capital, address the issues in the priority regions where the quality of education and the quality of healthcare, prioritize doon na lang muna. No? Kasi probably we'll have greater resources by 2026. But right now, I think we need to prioritize is converge, no? Synergistically, health, education, nutrition, food security, all in this priority, inequitable areas. So equity talaga is the issue, but yes, we have the force of government to I would like to see all of government, all of society in selected priority regions where the biggest inequity lies, and that will for me, I see an accelerated development of human capital.
Yeah.
Look at education. Ang taas nga ng budget now, but every year we lack schools. What more of the inequity areas?
But what about the suggestion of Dr. Navarro for the private sector, for example, to build a hospital and then the government pays off, let's say, the Aboitises, the Ayalas, the Cs? Will that work? Because that's never been done, I think, in the last, at least, go ahead.
I have no problem with that, Karen. But as I said, let's do it in places where there are less hospitals. Well, interestingly, Karen, even in Metro Manila, we need hospitals because the population is so large. Cannot even accommodate the people that truly needs it. No? So yes, I have no problem in the PPP, all what has been mentioned earlier, even the build and transfer later. No? Build, operate, and transfer to the government, but starting with the private sector, being given incentives by the national government.
Okay, so my last question before I move it to JC Punong Bayan. Is that JC? Yes, because I have TV patrol, so I do have to work. Okay, no, but my last question is, what can President Marcos Jr. focus on? Can you be specific? You said in your presentation that this administration is focusing more on the physical infrastructure development. But one might ask, can you blame the president? Because when you build infrastructure, the logic is, this is the magsaysay reasoning, right? That you build, then you hire more people, then more people are working, so the economy starts to roll. So, but he has other problems. He has inflation issues, right? So, what can President Marcos Jr. focus on to actually move forward in terms of maybe parity with Thailand, even if their numbers are lower in terms of growth? You're right that we're starting from such a low base that we can't trust on those numbers because it's quality of life, right? So what can he do?
I think the problem with this administration is it lacks visibility. And physical infrastructure are much more visible than social infrastructure or human development.
But didn't Duterte also like visibility? You mean physical, infra?
But infra was not there. We didn't do a lot of infra at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, but you had 194
Yeah, that's true.
projects. The thing was, it was slow. It wasn't successful, right?
It was slow. It was
Yeah.
slow, yeah.
Yeah, the build. It was, I don't know where the
That's
build
true.
went.
That's true. But
Yeah,
no,
okay.
but
yeah.
I think I have matured since I left Duterte, and now I'm more concerned really about human capital and social infrastructure. I think that should be the priority. As I've said, priority of nature and priority of order. That's the sequence: human, social, and then physical infrastructure. Unahin muna yung human and social infrastructure.
Okay.
Diba?
Before Dr. Tan, what can President Marcos Jr. do?
Okay, I agree with Secretary Pernia on the prioritization, but let me amend that. For the use of the government budget, that should be the priority. But we should give equal priority to infrastructure, and including social infrastructure like hospitals and school buildings, but using the private sector through PPPs. So I think that's something that can be done.
Are we, just quickly, how are we faring when it comes with PPPs in comparison to our ASEAN neighbors?
Oh, we have a long history. In fact, compared with our ASEAN neighbors, we have the longest history of using PPPs. And I actually have a slide on kaya lang
But
we
it's
can see.
okay.
You can see actually that PPPs, in terms of investment and number of projects, they were largest during the Ramos administration and during the Aquino administration. And it was also during that time that we experienced high growth.
Okay, my argument. All right, Dominique.
Well, for me, I think, we've been doing this kind of, market-friendly reform since the start, and really not going back into non-market-friendly reforms.
Are we going back there?
For example, one of the things that's been highly criticized is what happened to the rice cap.
Yeah.
So it's really, you can see the intent of the administration to pursue market-friendly reforms in small things. I mean, this one, because we're really selling the country abroad, this is really what we should be. It should be a complete picture that we are open for businesses coming here. It's going to be easy to work in the Philippines. So those things, I think, very on the, not really major things, but really just pursuing that kind of reputation for the Philippines so that they continue to come here in the Philippines, to come into the country.
Would you describe the rice price cap as like a panic reflex?
Might be. Rice prices during that time was really going was really increasing so much higher. Inflation, we've had high inflation for the past 2-3 years already. So might be. I don't want to second guess what some of the economic managers were thinking during that time. But I guess seeing what happened after that the price cap did not really work, that you do have supply constraints, and that's really where you should be focusing your attention to. That should be sort of I guess a lesson learned, that we do have proper policies in place already, and panicking or looking or going back to non-market friendly reforms will actually hurt the country even more.
Okay, now Dr. Tan, JC, can you join us on stage already? So Dr. Tan, what should President Marcos Jr. do? At least maybe top priority.
If I had 3 minutes with President BBM,
Please.
I will tell him, Mr. President, we need to work not in silos. So health is working in silo, education is working in silo. Here is agriculture working in silo, food production, food security, and even economic policies. Let them all work together synergistically. Choose the priority areas in the Philippines. Show that it can be done even in less than a year or even 2 years. Show the well-being of both human capital, social infrastructure just in the next 2 years. Just make those 5 agencies work together, not in silo, but together.
All right. Thank you very much. And perhaps, JC, can you ask the audience for some questions, maybe 2 or 3?
And ask that.
Yeah, so there's a microphone there to members of the audience. You can ask questions, maybe 2 or 3 questions before we close.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Karen, for moderating the discussion. A round of applause, please, for Ms. Karen and the discussion. I think I got the other mic. Okay, I think we have time for a few questions. So yes, we only have time for 2 questions, please. So please approach the mic and please give your name as well as affiliation and then your question straight away. Thank you.
I'm Nestor Palabia, batch 1980 graduate of AB Economics from UP Manila. I'm now a consultant of the International Trade Center, and I spent 32 years with the Philippine government, a contemporary secretary per niya. All right. I met a lot of studies for development as a DTI person. And one of the elements they always pointed out to us is that among the elements for development is governance. So if we were to have a specific recommendation for governance, what element of improvement would this body recommend?
Governance.
Yes, governance is an element of to bring us in the future because society is multisectoral, government, private, civic, religion, technology, etc. But it's always governance where we score low in the assessment. And governance not only includes policies, but implementation, but capability, vision, the whole gamut. So what would it be where the current leadership should be guided in terms of governance? If you talk to the president, what should I do to have a better government?
Dr. Pernia, any comment on that?
Yeah, well, as we have been talking about here, in terms of governance, we have to prioritize the importance of different areas of concern. And as we said, my own priority, and I think it's not only my own because it's a priority of nature and priority of order, is we should really prioritize human capital, then social infrastructure, because it's important for human capital. And physical infrastructure is all right, but you know, physical infrastructure tends to benefit the well-off. But if you're talking about the population as a whole, you know, the important areas is really human capital and social infrastructure. That is what I'm saying. If you're talking about good governance, that would be a sign, or that will be an expression of governance if we do it that way. But I don't think this administration is following that sequence.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Pernia. One last question, please. Any hands? Oh, yes. Oh, may pila na pala. Okay. Sige. Last question for this afternoon. Yes, go ahead. Sorry. Last one, please. We're very strict here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mark Lester Rosales, Public Administration student from Iloilo Opang Rodriguez, Institute of Science and Technology. First, Dr. Tan, I have a correction po about sa Humanhon. Kasi ang Humanhon ay hindi po siya na-discover ni Magellan. Matagal na po siyang discovered ng mga taga roon. And dati po siyang spiritual place ng mga native. So, ito na po ang aking questions. Unlike Japan, mas mataas ang younger generation natin based on the graph presented. Also, the more we have a younger generation, we have a human capital or so much more workforce. Okay? Also, sa dami ng human capital natin sa younger generation, may isang hindi natin masyado napapansin doon is yung high standard ng mga employer, both government and private. So, what do you think po? Any recommendations or any comment about doon? Dahil sa future, magagamit din po natin ang mga younger generation na ito, lalo mataas pa rin ang ating poverty rate. Yan lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Please go ahead. Whoever wishes to answer.
I thought it was addressed to Dr. Tan kasi your name was mentioned first. But, about Homonhon. But,
I stand corrected in Homonhon.
Yeah. Tama ka, Iho, about Homonhon. But about your question on our young, our young are scrappy and hungry. Are we gonna throw away our shot? That's from a paraphrase of Hamilton. No, so yes, you're correct. No, the young population is huge, and that can be a potential. But we have a human deficit problem, and that's something that we must address. For those who are already of working age, no, and they should be made employable through skills grading and hopefully through the participation of the private sector. And there were previous proposals actually from my institution, or the Philippine Development, PIDS, Philippine Institute for Development Studies, about a voucher program for private firms that would like to participate in apprenticeship to upskill the young workforce. So there are good ideas that can be revisited. Thank you.
Just to add on to that, I think one of the things, though I'm not an expert here in education and social policies, is that we do underappreciate technical and vocational trainings and courses here in the Philippines. So if you look at, for example, if you look at migration, when people migrate to other countries, what they do need are those technical and vocational courses, which are underappreciated here. Sometimes, employers look for college graduates. I think maybe a change in mindset in terms of the skills that are needed and not really the diploma that students have.
Yes, ako naman, let's look at, as you are mentioning, indeed we have a large young population. Yes, but let us look at the quality of our young population. How do we improve it education-wise? I've mentioned about the health challenges and education challenges, but let us also look at even food, hunger of the young people. Are they really eating right now, or do they really have access to other social services? I'd like to put it that way.
Okay, any last words, Sir Ernie? Any last word that you want to give about that?
Yeah. Well, I already spent a lot of time speaking there, so I probably have run out of steam now.
Okay, on that note, I'm afraid I have to cut short the open forum because we have other items yet on our for our program this afternoon. So please join me in thanking our discussants, Dr. Adora Navarro, Ms. Dominique Velasquez, and Dr. Jaime Galvestan, and of course, Professor Pernia. Okay, so for those who still have questions, you can still send your questions to upsepublicaffairs.upd.edu.ph, and we will direct them to the speakers. Now, before we end, we would like to present Dr. Pernia with a token of our appreciation. May I request Dean Joy Abrenica of the UP School of Economics and PCED Executive Director, and Dr. Carl Robert Handok, Chair of the UPSE, on stage, please. Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Pernia, we're very glad to present to you Sweet Surrender, a painting by artist Joel Reglos. Now, Sweet Surrender is a reflection of Joel Reglos' spiritual journey with hues of sky blues representing the tranquility of grace, warm and inviting yellows symbolizing the enduring flame of hope, and bold, vibrant reds embodying the unwavering strength of his beliefs. This art piece is from the collections of Gallery Joaquin. On behalf of the UP School of Economics and the Philippine Center for Economic Development, thank you very much, Dr. Ernesto Pernia. By the way, Prof ko si Sir Pernia sa Econ 101 several years ago, so I'm a product of his tutelage as well. Okay, so with that, we formally end Dr. Pernia's lecture, and we still have something in store for you. And by the way, if you're wondering, we have a mock-up of a book here on the right-hand hand of the stage, and it's actually representative of the book that we are creating out of the PCED at 50 lecture series. Yes, sir. And yes, sige po.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that our lectures from Dr. Sikat up to now, and then Balisacan is still going to speak sometime. All these lectures are going to be published, including the discussants' comments. So the discussants were not able to give their prepared discussion, but these things are going to be published in a book. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ernie. So the book that we're going to publish is going to be concrete proof of the fruits of PCED over the last 7 months and the effort that we have put into this to bring everyone together for the sake of economic development and sharing with you insights from past Director Generals of the NEDA. So please watch out for the book that we're going to publish quite soon. Okay, so at this point, we still have a special segment in our program. And if you're wondering, by the way, I'm JC Punong Bayan, Assistant Professor here at the UPSE. So we have a special segment where we commemorate and celebrate the 95th birth anniversary of one of the most eminent teachers and researchers in economics in Philippine history, former UPSE Dean Jose Encarnacion Jr. A round of applause, please, for the late Dean Encarnacion. So born on November 17, 1928 and died on July 5, 1998, Dean Jose Encarnacion Jr., affectionately known to his friends as Pepe or JE to his colleagues, was the longest-serving dean of the UP School of Economics. He served in this position for 20 years, from 1974 until his retirement in 1994. Of course, as many of you know, it is after him that the UPSE's main building is named. The very walls and halls of the school witnessed JE's exemplary scholarship, transformative mentorship, and singular dedication to economics education and practice here in the Philippines. Dean Encarnacion achieved a great deal during his productive life. In 1963, he was among the 10 outstanding young men of the Philippines. He also earned the distinction of being the first national scientist in the field of economics. He's also the main proponent of the theory of lexicographic preference in microeconomics. But Dean Encarnacion's legacy extends well beyond his achievements as excellent economist. Perhaps more memorably, he was a much-beloved teacher, mentor, advisor, friend, colleague, husband, and father. And now we proudly present to you a video that we prepared, Remembering JE. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Encarnacion, the number one son of Dean Encarnacion.
My name is Emmanuel de Dios. I'm currently retired from the School of Economics. I'm Professor Emeritus from the school where I've taught for about almost 40 years. During that time, I also served once as the dean of the school and various other positions, including chairman. My special connection with Encarnacion is I am his last dissertation advising.
I'm Florian Alburo, Professor Emeritus at the School of Economics, and was an advisee of Professor Encarnacion.
The number one thing I learned from my father was integrity. Some of you will recall the incident at the school when some exam questions in some economics class were leaked, thereby putting the results in doubt. He wanted the class to retake the exam, but this decision was challenged in court. So he didn't want to recommend the class for graduation, but I understand the university ordered him to do so anyway. And so when he presented the class on graduation day, he introduced them to the university president as the graduating class by court order. I recall he was quite upset with the whole thing at the time.
We're about to have lunch, and we typically had lunch as a faculty together. He would always ask, oh, what are you writing now? So that was a kind of test, as it were, as to whether you were keeping up with the duties of a faculty member, not just in teaching, but in doing research. And in particular, he would ask that in order to keep you on your toes, to see that you were still striving, you were always striving to publish in particular. He laid great stress on the publication of research, particularly in international journals. Certainly the spirit of the school, its desire to always excel and its striving to maintain integrity in all of its dealings, that is the contribution of Encarnacion. And he did that primarily through personal example.
The favorite expression he always was saying, what do you want to say in 2 words, or say what you want to say in 1 minute, and therefore, if you cannot do that, then you know what, you're not doing anything. Excellence and scholarship, excellence in everything you do, and scholarship in the sense of being able to publish in journals and being judged by your own peers, and therefore you are able to show excellence in that one, in that kind of scholarship. So I think what Professor Encarnacion really left with us is whole idea of excellence in what you do, and scholarship being an output of what you are doing in excellence.
Model for succeeding generations.
A scholar and an excellent one at that.
So with that, congratulations on the 50th anniversary of the PCED, and thank you for this tribute on Papa's 95th birth anniversary. Thank you from the family.
Hello, thank you so much. In fact, right now, this afternoon, we're joined by some family members of the late Dean Encarnacion. I think Telly, the wife of Paul, is here. Hello, hi. Hello, so here's Telly. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, so before we close today's programs, we have a special presentation from the UP by the UP Concert Chorus, who will serenade us with some nostalgic songs. So please enjoy.
Good afternoon. We are the UP Concert Chorus. We are very honored and grateful to be performing and to help celebrate and remember the 95th birthday of Dr. Jose Encarnacion. We'll be performing classics and favorites from our repertoire. We have a medley of ABBA songs, ABBA, and of course we also will be singing Ikaw ang Lahat sa Akin by Cecil Acercon, popularized by Martin Rivera. For our first song, we dedicate this especially to him. This is Dahil Sa'yo.
Ikaw ang lahat sa akin, kahit ika'y wala sa aking piling. Isang magandang alaala isang kahapon, lagi kong kasama. Ikaw ang lahat sa akin, kahit ika'y di ko dapat ibigin. Dapat pa kitang limutin, paano mapipigil ang isang damdamin kung ang sinisigaw, ikaw ang lahat sa at kung hindi ngayon ang panahon upang ikaw ay maging bukas na walang hanggan, ako'y maghihintay pa rin. Ikaw ang lahat sa akin, sa may kapal aking dinadalahin. Dapat pa kitang limutin, paano mapipigil ang isang damdamin kung ang sinisigaw, ikaw ang lahat sa could hear the distant drums and sounds of bugle calls were coming from afar. There was something in the air that night. The stars were bright. Fernando, they were shining there for you and me, for liberty. Fernando, though we never thought that we could lose, there's no regret. If I had to do the same again, I would, my friend. Fernando, if I had to do the same again, I would, my friend. Fernando, oh, dancing queen, only 17, only 17. Dancing queen, only 17, dancing queen. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Oh, see that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen. Bright lights are low, looking up at the sun. Oh, when music, get to a swing, you get to look for king, look for king. Anybody could be that guy. Man is young and the music's high. When you rock music, everything's fine. You're in the mood for dance, mood for dance. When you get that chance, you are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17, only 17. You are the dancing queen. Feel the beat from the tambourine. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Oh, see that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen. Oh, dancing queen, dancing queen, dancing queen, dancing queen.
Wow, thank you so much, UP Concert Chorus. Walang kahupas-kupas talaga ang UP Concert Chorus. Palakpakan ulit natin sila. We're actually very proud that one of the performers you watched today is actually a staff member of UPSE. We're very proud of Miss Ina Moralejo, who works at the research office of UPSE. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're almost done with our program this afternoon. Just some final announcements. So as I mentioned earlier, we will have a compilation of all the transcriptions from the PCED at 50 lecture series, which will be published in May 2024. So please watch out for that book. That is the book that you can see on the stage right now with me. And we are inviting everyone to get a copy of the book on its release. Another announcement to all UPSE students and graduates with student number 69 to 71. So I'm sure some of you are here. Please save the date for Ang Pagbabalik on February 12 to 22 on 2024. Okay, so please take note of this, please. Okay, so we are also conducting a feedback survey. So please kindly fill out the survey form and help us with your responses by scanning the QR code that you can see right now on the screen. Okay, so I think that's that. Thank you very much to everyone for coming, and please feel free to stay behind, and there are refreshments at the back. Thank you so much.